In this video, I'm going to talk about my top 10 books I always think are keys, but aren't. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my top 10 comic books I always think are keys, but aren't. Now, let me paint a picture for you because I really hate it when this happens. Do you ever find yourself out there in an LCS, you're hunting, you're flipping through bins, you're like, what can I score here today? And then there you see it. Finally, that key, you see that cover, you're like, oh, I know this. Avengers number 229, this is it. I've totally seen this book before. You think you're a comic hunting god. You just scored a $50 book for $2.99. So you pull out your phone, you open up Key Collector, you start flipping through that Avenger section. It's really long. You gotta scroll. It takes a while to get to that 229 number. And then you finally come across that section and you realize, oh, wait, what? No 229? What is this? And then you realize you're wrong. This isn't a key. It's not even a book that sells for more than $5 on eBay. And you say to yourself, I hate it when that happens. Well, you're not alone because I do that every time I am out hunting in an LCS. So in this video, I'm going to talk about my top 10 books I always think are keys, but aren't. But before I get into the video for today, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, do one of those things, I would appreciate it. And also, let us take a moment to talk about the sponsor of our video, MySlabs.com. Now, unlike some of the books I'm about to show you, MySlabs.com is an online marketplace that specializes in graded collectibles. So you know they got a lot of keys on their website. And the best part about MySlabs is you can see right there, 1% fees for sellers. So sellers can make better deals with buyers and everybody gets to keep more money in their pockets. Well, I'm going to play this little commercial for you guys and I will see you on the other end.
Tired of paying 10%, 15% or more to sell your cards, comics, and digital collectibles? How does 1% sound? Too good to be true? Well, not anymore. MySlabs.com is the web's premier user-driven marketplace for buying and selling slabbed cards, sealed wax, and now slabbed comics and digital collectibles. So the next time you're forced to pay 10% or more to sell something from your collection, head over to MySlabs.com and join the 1% revolution.
Definitely go check out MySlabs.com. You won't be disappointed like I usually am when I am digging through boxes and boxes of comic books and I come across the books I'm going to talk about right now, which is top 10 books I always think are keys but aren't. And coming in at the number 10 spot is actually going to be Uncanny X-Men number 157. Now, of course, this is a book written by Chris Claremont in that great X-Men run. And every time I flip across this book and I see Dark Phoenix on the cover, I always think to myself, wait, this is a major key, right? Like, I mean, this is the first Dark Phoenix. And then I look it up for myself. I'm like, nope, not the first Dark Phoenix. I'm like, well, okay, well, this has got to be like, one of those like Madeline Pryor books, right? And sure enough, it's not. And then I think to myself, this is her first cover appearance maybe. And again, no, it's not. And so every time I come across my X-Men section and I'm flipping through those books, looking for those keys, I always come across this one and I am always disappointed. I think even the pose is reminiscent of like first appearance of Binary and other characters, within this run. So every time I'm like flipping through and just looking at that top half of the comic book, because you know how we do, we're trying to flip through really fast. We can only focus on the top half of the comic book. This is one that I always think is a key, and I'm always sad to see that it is not. Now, coming in at the number 9 spot is Amazing Spider-Man number 251. You guys know this cover, right? You guys have all seen this. Every time I flip into this section, I'm always hoping I'm going to hit 252, but we all know 252 is never in those bins. I'm always hoping I'm going to see like the first appearance of Hobgoblin or something like that. And every time I see this book, I always think to myself, wait, I feel like I've seen this before. Like, is this the second appearance of Hobgoblin? Maybe this is like a Ned Leeds thing. Maybe it's like Ned Leeds becomes Hobgoblin, or this is the death of Hobgoblin. And every time I am disappointed. In fact, the only other times that, I remember where I've seen this book is all the other times I've passed this book when digging through the ASM section. So every time I see this book, I always get a little bit irritated because I know there are so many Hobgoblin keys, and this one is not one of them. All right, the next book I want to talk about is Iron Man number 61. And this one is the one that gets me every single time. But why I always get disappointed when I see this one is because every time I flip through it, I always think that somehow, miraculously, there is an Iron Man 55 in this bin that I'm looking at. But of course, it's never Iron Man 55. It's always Iron Man number 61. And one of the reasons why I confuse the two books all the time is A, of course, they're right next to each other in terms of numbers, and B, they have the same exact trade dress in the top half of the comic book. In fact, I would also argue that the covers, as far as the blocking is concerned, is also very similar to Iron Man number 55. So every time I see this book, I feel like I discover the Mad Titan himself, and sometimes I'll even see the price tag on it, and it'll be like $5, and I feel like the LCS made a mistake, and I feel like a comic hunting god. But lo and behold, it's never that book. It's always this one right here. And every single time I get disappointed when I see it. All right, coming in at the number 7 slot is another ASM book. This is ASM number 126. Now, every time I flip through this one, I always think that this is the first appearance of the kangaroo. In fact, I don't even know if I would buy it if it was the first appearance of the kangaroo, because realistically, like, who cares about the first appearance of the kangaroo? On top of that, because this is number 126, I mean, you guys know those ASM 120s, I feel like every single book in that 120 section is a great key book. So every time I see the number 120 whatever, I always think like I've discovered a key, and every time I realize it's this book right here, which of course nobody wants it. So ASM 126 always disappoints me when I flip past it. Now, coming in at my number 6 spot is Avengers number 160. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a very cool cover. I love me some Grim Reaper, and this is him looking super badass. And maybe that's the reason why I always feel like this book should be a key, is because every time I flip past this cover, I'm always drawn to it. On top of that, this section of Avengers, I don't know about you guys, but for some reason, I find it really hard to remember what are the key books and why they're keys in this era of Avengers. You know, basically anything Avengers 120 through 180. I always have a hard time remembering what the significance of those books are. So I always think to myself, is this like first Graviton, or is this like first Scott Lang or something like that? I can never remember what these books are. And every time I see this one right here, I always think to myself, oh yeah, this is one of those keys, right? And then of course, I'm always reminded that it is not a key. All right, and now we move on to the top 5 books, and coming in at the number 5 spot for me is Incredible Hulk number 319. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. This is a little bit of a minor key. This is the marriage of Bruce Banner and Betty Ross. But every time I go past this one, I always think it's the book that I actually want, which is Incredible Hulk number 418, first appearance of Talos. I don't know what it is. Well, of course I know what it is. It's those marriage covers. I always think that this is that first Talos appearance book, and every time I go past it, I always think, oh, I should get that, and then I'm like, wait, no, that's not the one I actually want. On top of that, you know, this is not even the coolest marriage book out there. I feel like there's the ASM book where Peter Parker marries Mary Jane, and I always feel like, oh, like I always get mistaken, like there's some value to this one right here because I know that there's some value to the ASM book. But Incredible Hulk 319 gets me every time I go past it. I know that this one is a key, so to speak, but one that I always think is a bigger key than what it is. All right, next up, I have Uncanny X-Men number 216, another book in the X-Men run that I always think is a key. And I think the reason for that is because, you know, when we're flipping through those X-Men books, I feel like there's a lot of purple and blue colored books within this section. So I'm always thinking to myself, I feel like I've seen this book before. Like, is this, you know, First Marauders? Is this a key Psylocke book? Is this, you know, second appearance of Gambit or something like that? But the cover actually always, you know, brings me in, because every time I look at the cover, I think to myself, oh, is this like, you know, the death of Storm or something like that? You know, I always think it's going to be like even a minor key, but it never really is. And for whatever reason, I see this book all of the time. Well, I think I understand why I see this book all the time, because it's always sitting in those X-Men bins because nobody wants it because, well, it's not a key. All right, moving on to my top 3 books. At the number 3 spot, I have Daredevil number 186. And similar to what I was talking about with the last book, this is a book that I always get confused as being a key because of the color palette. You know, we got that first battle of Daredevil and Punisher. You know, we got the Born Again storyline, one of the best Daredevil books ever written. We got that first Daredevil meeting the Heroes for Hire. There's all these books in this section of Daredevil that sort of have that blue and yellow aesthetic. And every time I swing past this book right here, I always think it's one of those other keys, and I'm always disappointed to find out that it's not. Moving on now to my second book I always think is a key, but isn't, is actually going to be Thor number 144. Now, you guys know me, I love my Silver Age books, so you always find me digging through those Silver Age sections, especially with this run right here, Thor. I love these Thor books, and there are so many great keys in this early Thor run that every time I flip past this one right here and I see this cover, I think to myself, this has got to be significant, right? Like I just looking at this Jack Kirby drawing with the forced perspective, I feel like, you know, isn't this the first appearance of like the cosmic control rod or something like that? You know, we have things like the Wrecker coming out of this time. We have those great Galactus origin books. And every time I see this book right here, I feel like I want to grab it. I'm feeling like, you know, Thor is on this cover, where I'm just reaching out, thinking that this is something I should add to my collection. And then every time I'm disappointed to find out that this is actually not a key. All right, and moving on now to my number one book that I always think is a key comic book, but I'm always disappointed to find out is not. And that one is Fantastic Four number 42. And what do you got to say about this book right here? Well, I got nothing to say about it because it is not a key. But in this particular Fantastic Four run, you know, when we talk about like everything Fantastic Four, like pre-issue number 70, I feel like there are so many keys in this run. And every time I come across this cover, I always think to myself, like, isn't this like the first cameo of the Cocoon, or maybe this is the first appearance of Inhumans, or, you know, the origin of Black Bolt, or origin of Inhumans, or maybe this is like a Silver Surfer cameo thing, or what? I don't know. But every time I come across this book, I always think this is going to be a key, and I always realize that it's not. And, you know, I should know by now because I've seen this book so many times when I'm digging through those Silver Age sections. This is one that is constantly picked over. Well, that is all I have for this video. Those are my top 10 books that I always think are keys, but end up not being keys. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have any books that whenever you're out hunting, you always think that it's going to be a key and you're always sad to realize that it's not? You know, this is probably also a good time for me to say that, you know, I have nothing against the books that I just talked about. You know, if you're going to do your runs and fill them out, of course, these are all great books to have in your collection. They're just all books that always make me think that I've discovered gold, and in reality, I've just discovered another great, you know, Marvel book. Anyways, drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next video.